Hello, boys and girls. Greg from the Scary Spirits podcast here to make you another cocktail. This week's cocktail is the Sweet Poison cocktail. And of course, it is the featured cocktail in today's episode. I'm going to start shaker with ice, as we typically do. To that, we're going to add light rum, 1 ounce. 1 ounce of light rum. Close enough. Next, coconut rum. 2 ounces. Coconut rum. Two ounces. I like coconut rum. Blue Curacao. 1 ounce. One ounce. Next, we shake. We'll take our cocktail glass and strain our cocktail in there. And we're going to take some pineapple juice, and we top it off. Really not much to go. There we go. There you have it. The Sweet Poison cocktail. Kind of cool looking. Yeah. Pretty good. Reminds me a lot of the Shark Lady. Thanks for watching, boys and girls. Hope you enjoy the podcast. See ya.
In this week's episode of the Scary Spirits podcast, the two faces of Dr. Jekyll, our often deeply philosophical doctor repeatedly asks himself, "Who am I?" His confusion stems from the struggle he endures over the rules of society and the desire to break them all. One does have to wonder, though, why Hyde, Dr. Jekyll's hedonistic counterpart, is portrayed as younger, more handsome, and up for anything. Honestly, the filmmakers make him look a lot more fun to be around. And that doesn't exactly deter you from thinking about taking just a sip or two of that magic potion, does it? Well, except for all the murders. That should stop you. Cheers.
Welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and/or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg,
Hey, I'm Karen.
and welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different yet highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm doing great. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing fantastic, Karen. Thank you for asking. All right, Karen, I believe this week was my choice, was it not?
It was. You want to tell everybody what movie you picked this week?
The film I have chosen, Karen, is called as it was released in the UK, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
Was it released as something different here?
It was, Karen.
And what was that title?
House of Fright.
Really?
Yes.
And do you have a drink to go with this lovely film?
I do, Karen. It's called the Sweet Poison Cocktail.
Ooh, you want to tell everyone how to make it?
We're going to need 1 ounce of light rum, 2 ounces of coconut rum, 1 ounce of Blue Curacao, 1 handful of ice, pineapple juice, and a pineapple wedge if you want to get fancy, Karen. We're going to combine both rums and the Blue Curacao in a cocktail shaker filled with ice. You shake, shake. Then we pour into a cocktail glass. We fill the rest of the glass with chilled pineapple juice, Karen.
Yeah.
Very important. Chilled pineapple juice. Then you can garnish with the pineapple wedge. Then you enjoy, Karen.
I'm enjoying.
You know what it reminds me of?
Well, I have a lot more pineapple juice in mine than yours. My glass is about 2 times the size as yours.
Yes, Karen, that does not look like a cocktail glass to me. But whatever.
Mine's bigger, Greg. What does it remind you of?
Does it remind you of anything we've had?
We've had a couple drinks like this, but I don't remember the names.
Reminds me of the Shark Lady.
Little bit.
But,
now that you mention it, it's got the color and everything.
Yeah.
You and your lanai drinks, you must have summer on the brain.
Always, Karen.
It's another one that goes on the lanai menu.
I like spending 365 summer vacation, Karen. That's what I'm all about.
I can't wait for my invite. And he laughs at me. I guess I'll keep waiting.
Should we give our friends and listeners time to make their own sweet poison? And I should say, it is a signature drink in the Jekyll and Hyde Club in Greenwich Village. That is how it ties into our film, Karen.
Go make your poison drink.
Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
All right, Karen, might you have a brief synopsis for us?
I do.
Go on. Tell me a story.
In London in 1874, Dr. Henry Jekyll's wife, Kitty, is secretly involved with his friend Paul Allen, who hounds money from Jekyll. Ignoring the warnings of his colleague and friend, Dr. Ernst Littauer, the middle-aged, mild-mannered Jekyll concocts a chemical potion which he hopes will help him learn the depths of the human mind.
Thank you, Karen, for that brief synopsis.
I think it might be from Wikipedia.
It is.
I couldn't find anything that wasn't in French. When I kept searching, every summary I found was in French. I don't know if there's another film or what, but...
Don't know.
Do you know what this movie is based on? Vaguely.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
By Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yes. Do you know when it was published?
I don't know exactly when it was published, no.
It was in 1886. And I just thought it was interesting that Stevenson wrote his allegorical novel after experiencing a nightmare. Just a little tidbit.
Okay. Are you ready to get into it, Karen?
I'm ready to get into it, Greg.
The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, a Hammer production, which I haven't mentioned yet, from 1960. Film opens and we have credits, Karen. And I wrote there's awful happy music playing for some reason.
There was very happy music.
At one point, it even sounded like a Christmas carol or something, I thought. But whatever. And then we have words to read, Karen. London, 1874.
That must have been stressful for you.
2 words to read there, Karen. Oh, a word and some numbers. And I wrote, we see children playing and boys are being boys.
I thought they were in a park, but they're not.
No, apparently they're in Dr. Jekyll's yard. Apparently he has playground equipment in his yard, Karen, outside his lab in his house.
I think he's put it there on purpose because he wants to observe the children, which isn't creepy at all.
Oh, it's even less creepy that the little girl really has an affection for him, it appears. But are they like special needs kids?
I think they are mute.
That's what I think too, because they
I
don't
don't know if
talk.
they're deaf. Well, they say they can't talk.
Okay.
I don't know. They didn't mention deaf. They just mentioned mute.
Jekyll's talking to Dr.
Ernst is who I call him.
Ernst Littauer. And he's talking about how they work out their aggression during play. Something like that. I guess they can't speak is the point he's making.
Basically, it looks like it's a whole just experiment. It's an observational experiment where he watches these children because they can't explain their emotions, because they can't speak. He watches them act out their emotions through actions. So if they're upset, they act a certain way. If they're happy, they act a certain way. So because they can't say, give me back my toy, or yes, you should share, or whatever. They can't talk. They don't look like they know sign language or anything. But it's just he's got like a lab of children out in his backyard, and he's watching, which again isn't creepy at all. But he's not a nice guy. He makes a comment about how they're dumb human animals. He doesn't have any affection for them whatsoever. He looks at them as purely scientific specimens. But he does take a flower from the one little girl that
he does, and
seems to like him.
And you can tell he kind of, likes her too, but whatever. He, appreciates whatever. But then we learn that Jekyll has been ridiculed by his peers.
It's not great for a scientist to be laughed out of your last lecture. And he's pissed, as you would be.
That ever happened to you, Dr. Karen? I don't think it would it?
No.
Never. Apparently he lives as a recluse in London, and apparently he has also abandoned his wife, Kitty, as well.
Well, he's a recluse, but he's basically got a lab in his backyard. It's like the backyard shed.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But he's ignoring his wife. And Ernst is reprimanding him.
And Ernst makes it sound like his house is falling apart and shit, like,
I think he means his household, like his relationship. But I agree.
He meant his house. Like, then they showed his house, and I'm like, what? He's got people to take care of that shit. He doesn't need to be doing anything.
I thought the same thing, but after I saw it, I thought he meant his home.
Okay.
Versus his.
Even though he's been ridiculed, Karen, by his peers and been laughed out of his last lecture or whatever the hell, he seems to be doing okay for himself, Karen. I'm just saying.
Yeah, he has money. I don't know where it's coming from, because he quit his position. He says after they laughed him out of his last lecture, he quit. He took his ball and went home.
Yeah.
He's not like, F you guys, I'm out. Peace out. Good day.
It's all pretty heavy stuff, like philosophically is what I would say that he talks about. But I did make a note that he compares man as he could be to man as he would be. And Dr. Littauer, Ernst, makes a comment, about there's so few saints and so many sinners, Yeah,
I thought that was pretty
I like that
observant.
line.
Yeah. So they're basically just talking about how everyone has good and evil in them. But Dr. Jekyll is very dramatic about the fight. And it's beyond good and evil, he says, it's what you, like you said, what you could be and what you would be. And Ernst says violence feeds the weaker man. So he thinks the weaker man is what you would be. And that's when he says, that's why there's so few saints and so many sinners. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
And then Jekyll takes a monkey from its cage and injects it.
A huge needle. Poor little monkey.
The monkey begins jumping around the cage recklessly, I wrote. It kind of looks like he's doing in reverse, moving in reverse to me.
You think? Because I was thinking, how'd they get that monkey to do that? Did they speed him up?
No, I think they filmed him just behaving normally or jumping around his cage, and then they played it backwards, and that's why he looks so erratic. But Jekyll says in 4 hours, it will be back to its docile self.
Oh, I thought he said 24 hours, but you're right. It's probably 4. Speaking of that, so before we go any further, where did you watch this? Because it's not available on Amazon Prime.
It is not. I watched it on YouTube, Karen.
So did I. I just wanted to make sure we probably watched the same one.
Yeah, I tried to find a different one other than YouTube just because I figured that's what you would do.
I did too. Wouldn't that have been funny if we both went and watched it somewhere else? I couldn't find it though. So YouTube
either.
is where you need to find it.
There were other places, but you had to have like a log. You had to be like a,
Sign up. Yeah.
sign up and whatever. So then Kitty enters.
Well, before she enters, Ernst wants to know if he specifically asks him, have you experimented with this on any other creatures?
Yes.
But before he can answer, Kitty waltzes
enters.
in.
Yeah, and when she walked in, I'm like, well, Kitty looks fine. She doesn't look like she's unkept or anything. Like, she doesn't look like she's suffering, Karen. That's what I thought.
She's pretty.
We hadn't seen his house yet, but judging from her, I think they're fine. He's doing fine. His house isn't falling apart. But anyway.
It's his home, Greg. It's his heart.
I get it.
His family unit.
Kitty tells Jekyll that Paul is there to see him, and Jekyll just tells her to give him the money as usual. Go ahead.
Because she says, I don't want you to see him. I don't want you to give in to him. But Jekyll just says, give him the cash.
And then outside the laboratory, Kitty tells Dr. Littauer about Henry acting strange. Strange noises and voices coming from his room. And Kitty asks do you think he could be insane and could be committed, Dr. Ernest?
You think it's bad enough that we can put him in an institution?
Please, let's help him. But do you think we could put him away? I thought something was up right there.
Yeah, that's a telling line. But Ernst says that Henry is obsessed with his experiments. He's not insane. He's just obsessed, which there's a fine line there. But they both are like, yes, we're going to help him.
Then Kitty goes and tells Paul back in the house that Henry will save him once again. And then they kiss, Karen. And apparently they are having an affair.
I said, they have a love connection right in the house. I mean, he's 50 feet away?
Yeah, but he spends all his time in the lab. I get it.
He's not paying attention to his house. You get it. When you're in your backyard lab, you don't really pay attention to what's going on in your house.
So then I guess it's later that evening and Kitty is going to a dinner party.
She's all glammed up.
Yeah, Henry will not go.
I said, she looks pretty.
And Henry tries to talk her into staying home. He says he will stop working if they could just spend the evening together, Karen.
Yeah, I thought this was the one sweet moment. He tried.
Yeah. She refuses because she mustn't upset her friend.
Her friend, yeah. Well, and to be fair, it is last minute. I mean, she spent all this time getting ready to go, and she told him earlier that she was going. She invited him to go.
And that's what she says, but we didn't see any of that shit happen.
No, we didn't. But, it's almost like he's just spoiling her fun. I mean, we know that's not what it is, but on the surface, it could be that.
So Kitty leaves. And then we see Henry go into his lab and he injects himself, Karen.
With very dramatic music playing.
Yes, and I did make a note. He does appear to be very careful to keep everything sterile.
Yes, he does. He disinfects very well.
So then he sits at his desk and keeps track of his pulse. Do you think this is the first time he injected himself?
No, because we read his notebook later. Did you not read his notebook?
Yeah, I did. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did, Karen.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to hear what it said in just a few minutes.
But he starts to shake and his eyes get very wide.
Yeah, as I wrote, he begins convulsing and puts his head down on his desk. Then we see Paul and Kitty dancing at a party, I wrote, but it's really a club.
Yes, she's not
apparently
at a dinner party.
No.
And it's not high society because Paul is saying to her, this isn't your usual crowd. You were bored with that. I'm showing you something different.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem sleazy to me, really. You know what I mean? I've been in
No.
worse places than that.
You could do better. They imply it is, though, and it's
I know.
none of the places they go look all that terrible. There's one.
Yeah. But they seem to have this like relationship thing where they like to like fight, or I don't know what their deal is. You know what I mean? They're like they play
are
word games with each other or some shit.
Or they're the break up and back together couple. We all know them.
Yeah.
We know the
within a
ones,
sentence, they're broke up and then they're back together.
Well, in this scenario, yes, but we all know those couples who break up and get back together, break up and get back together. There's some sort of titillation for them in that. So they're doing it. And that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. I wrote, Paul threatens to call off the affair, and then they do the thing where they get back together. And I wrote, apparently Kitty likes bad boys.
Yes. That's what becomes clear here.
Then we see Henry writing in his book, his diary, whatever. And all he writes is complete success, free. Then he leaves without us ever seeing his face. We just see the back of him as he gets up and leaves.
Well, it says this. So this is, did you read his notebook here? This is experiment number 5.
Oh, I didn't see that part. I didn't read that part.
Yeah. So this is experiment number 5. All we see is 3 to 5. 3, no results. Number 4, several hours. That's when he had what Kitty was talking about with Ernst, where his voice was different. He was angry, making noise, that kind of stuff. And now this recipe in number 5 is a complete success. But he does leave out a very small door.
Yes.
Which I don't know. What is that? Do you know, like, does it have a name or?
It probably does, but it reminds me, spending a lot of time on a farm as I did as a child, Karen. It kind of looks like he has, well, like you said, his lab is kind of a shed almost, but he does have a regular door to enter in and out. But then he has like a double door, almost like barn doors.
Yes.
Like I guess he can receive deliveries and things like that for the
or
lab.
It's a carriage house, maybe converted.
Could be, right. Could be a converted carriage house where they would drive the carriages out. And in most barns that have doors like that, there is a smaller door cut in so a person can walk in and out without opening up the big door.
Big doors. Okay. But it's smaller than a person size.
It is.
He has to duck out.
Yeah.
And he does leave, and you're right. We don't see his face at first.
But he walks out into the street, and then he turns around and we see that he is now clean, shaven, and younger looking a little bit. And he has blue eyes instead of brown. And he hails a cab.
He smiles really big.
Then I wrote, he arrives at the same party as Paul and Kitty, but I know it's not a party now. It's a club. And as he
cabbie
walks,
takes him in.
Yes.
So he must have said, take me to a decadent place, because the cabbie's like, is
there any action here in London, cabbie? Well, take me there.
And he says, you'll like this place.
As he walks in, all the women seem very taken with him, Karen.
Well, they notice new blood.
Yeah. Do you think they think it's because he's a new guy, or he looks like an easy mark or something? Because they're shady.
Well, they're basically prostitutes in this club. And they
have a very different accent than the other people, like Sir Christopher Lee, who we haven't mentioned plays Paul in this film.
True. We should mention that, Sir Christopher Lee. He's dressed well, so it looks like he has money. They've never seen him before. So, it's not one of the regulars. So I think it's both. He's new and he's probably an easy mark.
Then Henry dances with a girl. Well, actually, it's Hyde right now, isn't it?
Yeah, we have to say it's Hyde.
Edward, right, is his name. So Hyde dances with a girl who asks him to buy her a drink. Actually, there's 2 of them at first. And she says, you want to buy 2 lonely girls a drink?
And he agrees.
And he agrees and says, wouldn't you rather dance? And then, she says yes. And then she kind of like shoos the other girl off. Like, whatever.
Who's not happy about it.
No, she's not. So where'd you think that was going, Karen? You think they were going to, like, I don't know, double the pleasure, double the fun, or what?
The two of them?
Yeah.
Could be.
Okay. I don't know. It just
But
odd.
you mean in the girls' minds?
Yeah. Do you think they were? You just said they were basically prostitutes, right?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think, yes, that's
Okay. All
because
right.
Christopher Lee goes off with two at another
He
point.
does. He does. Well,
So,
he's Sir Christopher Lee, Karen.
well, I don't think it was unusual in this establishment.
Okay. So Hyde is in there. I'm calling him Hyde when he's Hyde. And he sees Paul and Kitty dancing.
And at this point, I didn't know, but does he recognize Kitty?
Oh, hell yeah, he does.
Well, now, yes, in a minute we know he does, but I didn't know if he would because they certainly don't recognize him.
They don't. I mean, he's different enough looking, I guess, but not the traditional Mr. Hyde we had seen prior to this, probably, right? In the older films that we haven't even talked about yet. But anyway, so he excuses himself from the dance with the
Prostitute.
girl. Yeah.
Who's not happy about it.
No, and he does it rather rudely, too.
Oh, very rudely. Calls her a whore and hits her.
And he walks up and introduces himself as Edward Hyde to Kitty and Paul. So this is the first time we hear the name Hyde. He tells Kitty that he is an old friend of her husband's.
And he's been hoping to meet her.
And I think Paul has had too much to drink, Karen.
I believe that's true.
He's kind of being a jackass. Hard to believe that Christopher Lee could be a jackass, but he's being a jackass.
He's not being gentlemanly, for sure.
No. And then Hyde and Kitty have a dance.
He's kind of insulting Kitty. He basically says also, Paul says, Jekyll isn't possessive, but he's a damn good friend. So he's kind of laying out exactly what's going on, you know?
Yes. And as Hyde and Kitty are dancing, they have like this whole wordplay thing where, you know, she says, will you be calling on us later? And he says, yeah, I hope to. And she's kind of like in a roundabout way saying, you know, well, I hope you won't tell him about this or whatever. Keep what we're doing here secret. And
kind of flirty, but kind of, oh crap.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Don't tell on me.
So then the girl that Hyde was dancing with comes over.
Well, they go back to the table.
Yeah.
After their dance.
And then the girl that Hyde was dancing with comes over with apparently the nightclub bouncer, is as he is credited, but he's uncredited, but he's called the nightclub bouncer. And it's Oliver Reed.
Oh, because I was like, this guy looks familiar. Who is it?
Yeah, Oliver Reed.
I couldn't place who it was.
He's uncredited, but it's Oliver Reed.
So the woman who he danced with previously brings the bouncer over and says, this guy tried to force himself on me or something.
And I thought at this point, is he really a bouncer or is he her pimp?
I don't know, because he was sitting at the table with the two girls.
And he tells Hyde, give her a few sovereigns and we'll be done. Like pay her something and there'll be no problem. But Hyde tells him to go to hell.
Yes.
Twice.
Yes.
Like the bouncer like gives him an out or says, no, I said go to hell. You and your whore. And then they fight. And of course, Christopher Lee is always up for a fight here.
To a point.
Yeah, and he's backing his new buddy now, Edward Hyde. And he's got his back. But anyway, they fight and Hyde almost kills him, hitting him with a chalice or something.
But Paul does stop him. Because at first it's like, get him. And then it's like, oh, shit.
No, stop. Don't kill him.
Dude. Slow your roll.
Then it looks like the serum is about to wear off and Hyde tells Paul, he's got to go. I got to go.
No, he runs out of like Cinderella at the ball at midnight. Just takes off. I mean, got to go right now.
Yes, he does. The only thing missing was the coach that turns to a pumpkin.
And the glass slipper.
Yeah.
Got to talk about the shoes, Greg.
Then he goes back to his lab and apparently he cuts his hand on a beaker or something. I don't know.
It's a flask. He crushes it in his hand. And I thought that would come into play later, but doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's why I made a note of it, just because I thought it might come into play later.
Yeah.
But he does go then to see Kitty in her bedroom.
And she's preparing to go to sleep. And he tells her that he needs her.
Well, she lies to him first. He comes in and she starts talking about the dinner party, about how, what it was like at the dinner party. And then he starts to come nearer and she goes, I'm too tired. Cuts him off right there. But he says, I need you. I need you desperately, and hugs her. But nope, she's too tired. And I said, at this point, now I see his eyebrows and beard look fake. Yes. At first, I didn't really notice it.
Face. He's got a lot of makeup on his face too. Make him look older.
Yeah. But when I first saw him,
you didn't see him. No, you can tell. I
didn't make a note of it. But here, I wrote eyebrows and beard, totally fake.
Yeah. It didn't look right to begin with, but I wasn't sure they were fake, right?
Right. It was
They were a little too bushy eyebrows.
Yeah. But I didn't pay attention until now.
Right. We didn't have much close-ups until now either, really. And I wrote, he seems to be having an identity crisis, Karen.
Yes.
Who are you? Who am I?
Who am I? Who am I? And he starts to shake her. Like, who are you? Who am I? Yes. She's like, what the hell? I don't know. And she says, you're bleeding because he's getting blood on her.
And the strap falls off her arm, Karen, as he's shaking her.
Yes.
Then we cut and we see Hyde and Paul. I think the same club. They're at a club. I don't know.
It's a new place.
Okay.
Because they say, is this better than the last place or something like that? So there's a line in there, something like that. I don't know. To let us know it's a new place.
Okay. And apparently they're watching a floor show, Karen, a belly dancer with a snake.
Yes. Snake charmer. Kind of.
So they dance around, and at the end, she puts the snake's head in her mouth, Karen.
She dances all around. She's wearing basically a bikini, and Hyde is fascinated.
Especially when she puts the snake's head in her mouth.
They take great efforts to make sure the snake goes between her legs, too.
Yes.
Multiple times. And she spins it around, which I said is probably mean.
Yeah. I thought that's probably not good. Snakes probably don't like that, but whatever. But maybe it does. Shit. I don't know.
Well,
it's like you spin little kids around. I used to do that to my son all the time.
So I'm guessing what kind of snake it was.
I have a guess.
Okay. You think it's a Burmese python?
I think it's a boa constrictor.
Oh, crap. Well, we're going to talk about Burmese pythons.
Okay.
Which are incredibly large snakes. It could be a boa constrictor. I didn't look that up. I looked this up because what I did was I'm sure you remember it, at some award show, Britney Spears danced with a snake.
Vaguely.
And it was a Burmese python. And I tried to look up what snake was in this movie, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, so I'm guessing.
Right now.
While you do that, Burmese pythons are incredibly large snakes. They can reach up to 23 feet in length and weigh up to 200 pounds. They're constrictors, which a boa, obviously, constrictor is also. And they use their large, powerful size to squeeze their prey before eating it. The largest python ever was around 26.25 feet long and weighed roughly 550 pounds. So you might be right. These are pretty big. That was a record breaker, and it was found in Malaysia.
Well, I think one thing we can agree on, Karen, is that it is not venomous.
No, it's not.
It says constrictor, right?
Yes, and she does stick the whole head in her mouth, which I thought was bizarre, but okay.
And she's wearing a mask as she's dancing. You think they do that because girl doing the dancing is different than the actress who does all the talking later?
Probably.
Okay.
That's probably true because they do have a bit different figure.
Yes, I'd noticed that, Karen. So then Hyde introduces himself to her, and her name's Maria.
And Paul keeps telling Hyde, she is so out of your league.
Yeah, you don't
have a chance.
I've already tried that. Don't even bother.
Unless you're a prince or a sheik or something, she demands a lot of money.
So then Hyde goes to Maria's room.
Just walks right in.
Yeah. And we see the snake in a cage. And I wrote, I'm pretty sure it could get out anytime it wanted to.
Yeah, that's not a...
Because the bars are like
smaller than the snake. You can see it.
2 or 3 inches.
I mean, bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. The snake could just go right through those bars.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's not how you.
Yeah, you don't keep snakes in cages with bars.
No, you don't.
They're put in glass containers, I believe.
For a reason.
Then Hyde seduces Maria.
So this is where Paul takes 2 women into the back room because Paul ditches them for Maria.
And apparently Maria likes bad boys too.
And she says the snake is dangerous and it could get, and I said the snake could get out of there and he has no water or anything. Like, that's terrible way. And she tells Hyde she has to get dressed. And he says, don't let me stop you. And then she says, I have an appointment. And he says, you're going to be detained. And she says, you're very confident. And he says, it's needed in order to approach her. And she says, men who beg get nothing. And he says,
begging.
He's a man who simply takes.
Yeah, it's taken. She likes that. Apparently.
Works out.
He seduces her. Apparently they have relations, Karen.
It appears that way.
And then he leaves. Or he goes to leave, and Maria says, oh, you have a cold wife to go home to? And then Hyde says, oh, a cold wife. What an intriguing idea.
Yes, and Maria does beg him kind of to stay. Because she says, will you return? He says, I don't know. oh. It's interesting that she said, men who beg get nothing. And she's sort of begging him, and he's leaving. So it's a reversal there.
Then Hyde goes home to Jekyll's home and sees Kitty in the morning. Like, he knocks on the door like he's visiting, like as Hyde, right?
Yes, after the cold wife mention, he goes right over.
And he tells the housekeeper, or whatever she is, who answers the door, that he has an appointment with Dr. Jekyll. Housekeeper says, well, he is away, sir. And he says, well, perhaps could I talk to Mrs. Jekyll? So housekeeper, whatever, goes up, and Kitty agrees to meet him, and he comes right in the room behind.
He didn't wait.
No, he did not.
Is she in pajamas?
I don't think so.
Oh, because the maid says you're here awfully early to call on
A lady.
On a lady. And it kind of looked like pajamas, but maybe not. Okay.
I don't think so.
But she's getting ready for the day. She's putting on perfume. And they're flirty.
And he asks Kitty why she has an affair with Paul, and Kitty says that she loves him. Hyde says that love is an idiocy.
She reiterates she loves Paul Allen.
And then Hyde feels like, I guess he's going to turn back to Jekyll, so he rushes away. I have to go. Good day.
Yes. And he runs into the backyard, and no one notices.
Runs into the backyard and into his lab.
But he's Hyde. So she rebuffs him. Says, because he's flirting with her, wants to sleep with her. And she says, no, I'm in love with Paul. And then he starts to shake and runs into the backyard.
And into his lab.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Runs into the lab and puts his head down on the desk, Karen. Anytime he puts his head down on the desk, that means he's turning.
Yep. It's a good transition.
I suppose. Next we see Dr. Littauer, Ernst, examining Jekyll. And he says it appears his metabolism has sped up and he is aging quickly, basically.
That's what it comes down to. His life is burning inside himself at a much faster rate than normal.
Cut to Paul asking Kitty for money, and she refuses.
Well, because Jekyll's not supposed to be there. Jekyll's out of town or whatever, right?
Not at this point.
Well, the maid says that, or
yeah, he says he's away.
Oh,
doesn't say he's out of town. But then next, Paul does go to Jekyll in his lab.
Kitty's starting to feel like, wait a minute, maybe he only loves me for the money. She's being used, she says. Yeah, to Paul. Paul blows money at a substantial rate, because wasn't he just there 2 days ago?
Yeah, and we don't know why yet, but yeah, he does.
He has a special talent for that.
Yes. But they are honorable debts. He keeps calling them or something.
He must be betting red in Atlantic City over and over and over.
So then Paul goes to Jekyll's lab to see him and ask him for money. And Jekyll tells him that he is unable to help him now. His experiments have cost him money and he doesn't have any to spare. And he tells Paul not to call again for a while as he is going to be away. And Paul's like, okay. How unfortunate.
Paul is pretty happy-go-lucky. I mean, oh well, didn't get the money there. Doesn't seem stressed at all. Kitty's more upset than he is.
Yeah, so Paul leaves and he tells Kitty that Jekyll refused to give him money. And Kitty seems very concerned, I wrote.
Yes, what are you going to do?
Even though she told Jekyll several times already to stop giving him money.
Well, I think that was their cover.
I know. But he says, what will you do? She says, what will you do? What will you do?
She's worried.
So then we see Jekyll writing in his diary. And I quote, I have determined to discover all that Hyde can reveal. My bank and my solicitors are instructed to regard him as my attorney in my absence, my heir and executor if I fail to return. Or do I want to return to a life of frustrated isolation and loveless misery?
I just wrote, wow.
Long pause. Question mark. Jekyll pours some more serum. We don't see him inject himself this time, but that's what he's going to do.
Yep.
Then Hyde goes to see Paul at I wrote a gentleman's club, but it's not, I don't know what, I mean, it's not a gentleman's club as we think of it today, but I think at the time it would be called a gentleman's club.
Yes. Looks like a gambling place, right?
Men playing cards, I wrote. And then we learned that Paul has gambling debts. He's a gambler. Apparently not a good one.
Terrible. He's down $2,000.
And Hyde agrees to back him for $5,000. Hyde tells him just send him the notes as they become due. But Paul would rather have the $5,000 up front, but Hyde refuses.
So why is he doing this? So that Paul now owes him, correct?
Yes.
Instead of the debtors.
Yes, tit for tat.
Gotcha. Literally later. Yes. Okay. He also wants Paul to show him around all sleazy London because we start going to all these different places.
Yes. Next thing we see, they're at a fight.
A fight
bare
club.
knuckle fight. Yeah. Shh. Don't talk about Fight Club. Hello, boys and girls. You know, doing a podcast can be thirsty work. Lucky for you, we have all our drink recipes on our website, scaryspirits.com. And if you want to see how each drink is made, hit up our YouTube channel, Scary Spirits Podcast, and watch me play bartender. I show you how to make every themed drink. Now, back to the show. Then we see them at a bar.
Oh, I thought it was a whorehouse, but
I don't know, but men are pouring liquor down a man's throat who's almost dead.
Yeah, that was. He looks. I don't know how he didn't choke because he was passed out, and they're laughing. That guy ain't gonna make it.
And laughing.
Yeah.
And then we see Paul and Hyde in an opium den. I assume is what that is.
Yes.
Then they're back at the club, Karen, at the Sphinx, apparently. Or no, not the Sphinx. And at the other place where they're playing cards, right?
Yes.
But Maria's there and she is all over Hyde. And Paul is playing cards. And I wrote, he is a bad card player.
Hyde's watching him lose.
He goes through the 5,000 quickly, Karen.
Like in a day, or maybe two, I guess.
I think it was that night. I think.
You think they did all those things in one day? They saw a fight, went to the whorehouse.
Probably right.
Because the opium den, Paul was passed out.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it's a couple of days.
Probably
But they were doing other things besides him losing at cards. They were occupied.
So Paul gives all the notes to Hyde, and Hyde asks Paul to give him Kitty to settle the debt. Paul is appalled. You devil. And tells him to go to hell.
He won't do it.
He won't. Then we cut to Hyde letting himself in the house, as he could, of course, because he lives there. and goes to see Kitty. And Hyde tries to get Kitty to give herself to him in exchange for paying off Paul's debts. So Paul wouldn't give in, maybe Kitty will. I don't know. That's what he's thinking. Right?
Yeah, buy back your love.
But she refuses. She tells Hyde that he repulses her.
Yes.
Tells him to get out. I said good day. So Hyde leaves, and on his way out, he assaults a beggar.
Yes, to make himself feel better.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Just when you're watching this, did you notice that Hyde never blinks? Or very rarely blinks?
I noticed several. Yeah, I didn't really notice that, but I noticed that oftentimes he was staring off, not looking at the people who he's talking to, staring off in a different direction.
But he didn't really blink. So
he didn't either. Now that you mention it, yeah.
So how many times do you blink in a day?
Oh my God.
How many times do you think you blink each minute? Average. There's no cars in this one. You can't get me back.
I know. I'm going to say 47.
That's a little high.
Oh.
15 to 20 times each minute.
Really?
Which
just blinked
means
like 5 times thinking about it.
900 to 1200 times an hour. These are averages. Maybe you're a high blinker.
Maybe I have, eye issues.
Maybe you're just,
my eyes are dry.
Or maybe you're just excel at blinking. Just another one of the, so 14,000 to 19,000 times a day.
I like to bat my eyelids, Karen.
Yeah, that's what it is. I guess I'm resistant. 100,000 to 135,000 times a week, and 5.2 to 7.1 million times a year. Each blink lasts between 0.1 and 0.4 seconds, which means about 10% of the time you're awake. And there's no difference in how often you blink based on your sex or your age. But I know when I'm tired, I blink a lot more. Like if I'm driving, especially, I can feel it. Fascinating. Okay. It distracted me that he didn't blink, which I'm sure was on purpose.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice that Dr. Jekyll didn't blink, but I definitely noticed that Hyde didn't.
So then we cut to Hyde at a bar. I guess it's a bar, Karen. I don't know, but he's drinking with a man and his 2 sisters and his niece named Mary.
I don't know if it's
trying to prostitute Mary and 1 or 2 of the sisters. I don't know what's good.
Couldn't tell if it was a gypsy thing. They thrown in a gypsies. It kind of sounded like a gypsy song they were singing. Yeah. So
the song did reference gypsies. That was part of the lyrics. I heard that. And we cut to Paul and Kitty kissy facing. Apparently they've decided to run away together now.
Yes, they're all mushy.
Yeah, the hell with this. Let's just run away.
Run away and start a new life.
Right. Back at the bar, I wrote, I think the man and the 2 women are going to trick Hyde.
They imply that the youngest there is a virgin and he should be with her. And they're negotiating kind of, which is gross. But when he's drunk enough, the man says, I think he's ready. Bring him out.
So they bring him out and the man strikes Hyde over the head and takes his money. Then he pays the girls and they leave Hyde in the street.
In the street. Face down.
Cut to Jekyll waking up lying in the street in the rain.
Yep, he's been robbed.
And we didn't mention it, but Kitty gave Hyde a note earlier to give to Jekyll.
Yes.
Because Hyde said, I've seen Jekyll. And she says, well, if you see him again, give him this, would you please? And it's a note. So he decides to read the note. And it says, impossible to carry on, and I have decided to leave you, Kitty.
It looked like it was the second page of the note, but that's all we see because there was a 2 at the top.
Next, we see Jekyll writing in his diary. I have destroyed my formula and drugs, for I fear that Hyde has too much influence over me. No degeneracy is low enough to satisfy him. I have locked the door. Thinking he's locked out Hyde, right? That's what he's trying to say.
Yes.
Then Jekyll, the girl, looks in the window and the little girl, and he sees her, and then he goes out and watches the kids play some more. And as he's out there, he sees Kitty and Paul inside the house through a window.
Kissing.
And he gets angry. And as he's getting angry, the little girl offers him flowers, and he pushes her away.
Yes, so it's the same little girl. In the first couple of scenes, she gave him a flower. He took it inside, put it in water. This time he sees Paul and Kitty kissing, and he gets so angry, he pushes her violently to the ground. So we get the sense that
he feels bad after it, in other words.
Yes, but Hyde took over there in that minute, and then he feels bad.
He says, now I must exorcise him. Somehow drive him out.
Yes, and he just starts shaking.
Then he writes, I have returned by my own will. I am free. And it's different handwriting. Hyde has much prettier handwriting, I think.
He does.
So Hyde goes into the house and tells Kitty and Paul that he has a message from Jekyll. He wants to meet them all at the club that evening.
To work things out. Because, in a positive way for them. But Kitty is smart and says, I don't want to go. But what does Paul see?
Paul says, perhaps Jekyll will pay her off in a nice settlement.
Yes.
If she leaves him, she will get nothing. But if they part amicably, maybe she'll get a settlement.
Which she agrees to, but her first instinct was better.
And we cut to girls dancing at the club, Karen.
Can girls.
They're pantaloons. Is that what they're called? Pantaloons?
Yes. Lots of crotch shots in this movie, I wrote. Lots of lingering shots on crotch areas of women.
I didn't notice that.
I did.
And we see Hyde giving Maria a key and tells her he will meet her later. And we see Paul and Kitty arriving at the club. Paul asks, for Mr. Hyde, and the woman at the door tells Paul and Kitty that everything has been arranged in the room of Maria.
Yes, I didn't know that at first, but I put it together
She says something else. She called her something else, but she's referring to Maria. Paul doesn't feel right. He thinks something's up. So he says he better go see what's going on.
Yeah, he leaves Kitty downstairs.
Tells her to wait. Paul goes to see Hyde.
Now, if I was Kitty, I wouldn't have trusted Paul to go up there. Paul would take all the money. He would say, oh, you got a settlement of $2,000, Kitty, when really it was 10 and he took 8. I would never have trusted Paul to go up and negotiate for me.
And now that you say that, I wouldn't either. But at the time, it seemed like they were,
See, I didn't trust him. You think he was protecting Kitty by leaving her downstairs?
I did.
I think he was trying to get more
Karen,
for himself.
It's Sir Christopher Lee. I have to trust him.
Yes, I know. Your man crush mandates it.
Paul goes in and he demands to see Jekyll. Hyde tells him that Jekyll would like to talk to him privately and enters him into a room and locks the door behind him. And it's the same room we already saw the damn snake in earlier, right?
Yes, it's a small, closet almost.
Paul finds himself locked in the room with the snake. Cut to Hyde, going to get Kitty. He brings Kitty up to the room. Kitty demands to know where Henry and Paul are. Hyde tells her, believe me, your husband is here. Then he rapes her, Karen.
Yep. We don't see it.
No. We see enough to know that's what is going to happen, right? Next, we cut to Maria back at the house, and she's putting on Kitty's dresses, Karen.
Yeah, I didn't know. I said, is that Kitty's room? And then I said, it looks like the same candelabra that they kind of lingered on before. But yeah, it's Kitty's room.
Then Hyde arrives, and they kiss.
He says, the pattern of justice is complete.
And she asks, whose room is this? And he says, it is mine, finally. So then Kitty wakes up.
I don't know why she was out of it, but she was.
Yeah, she was. But she wakes up and looks at the mirror above the bed where she is and finds scratches on her neck. And she goes out and finds...
Well, and she's in one of the Snake Charmer's whorish outfits. Well, she's in an outfit, her outfit too. Yeah.
I thought that might have been her undergarments, Karen. I wasn't sure.
Oh, I don't think so. I think they've switched places.
But she goes out, and there's flowers on the table, and there's a card, and she reads the card, and the card says, "To make this perfect Eden, we have brought the snake." So then she enters the other room and finds Paul dead with the snake on him. He gone.
It was bad. He looked like he died from fright or something, don't you think? He wasn't squished, that's for sure.
No. That's why I said it's not venomous, right? Because
No, but they made it look like it was venomous.
yes, they made it look like he died from a bite.
Because his hands were up, almost stiff.
So Kitty goes to the balcony to get some air, I guess, in her undergarments. She allows herself to fall through the window of the club.
It's almost like a decorative skylight.
Yeah, skylight.
But she's hearing the music. She's thinking about, Paul. She's thinking about what just happened to her. And she just kind of gets dizzy and falls with a thud down into the ballroom.
Then we see Jekyll and Maria in bed. Maria tells him that she loves him. Hyde tells her he cannot love. He knows nothing about it. Maria says that is sad for him and maybe for her, but she still loves him.
Yeah, they've known each other, I think 48 hours at this point, maybe 72.
And then he goes to strangle Maria, and Jekyll tries to come back, but Hyde fights him off, right?
Yeah, you can tell when Jekyll's coming back. They do something really weird with his voice. It's lower and slower.
It's his Jekyll voice.
Yes. Sometimes I notice it more than other times, and this is a time where I really noticed it.
But he does kill Maria, and the camera pans up, and it is Jekyll. So he's turned
comes back
Jekyll.
right after he kills her. He comes back as Jekyll, I think, right?
Yeah. So then Jekyll runs to his lab and has a conversation with Hyde in a mirror.
Yes, he's looking at himself in the mirror, and all of a sudden Hyde is there.
And Hyde tells him he could not destroy Jekyll because that would mean destroying himself. So he destroyed all those around him. And that Jekyll will be blamed for his deaths, and he will have to hide, and he will be chased down. And just like Mr. Hyde has had to stay hidden.
Yeah, he says in a few hours, they'll be searching for you because they're going to start to find all the bodies and put the pieces together.
Next, we cut to police investigating the club, Karen. Lady at the club tells them all about Hyde. She says she's never met Jekyll.
She calls him a free-spending, perfect gentleman.
Then we see Jekyll, right?
Hyde, not Jekyll. She calls Hyde that, not Jekyll.
Yes. Next, we see Jekyll writing a letter to Dr. Littauer. To my dear Ernst, you are the only one I can look to. You can perhaps help save something of the life and honor of your truly repentant friend, Dr. Jekyll. And he's going to send it to Ernst, right? He calls to a guy out in the street, says, "Hey, come here." He's going to give him the note and say, "Deliver this," right, to Dr. Ernst.
Yes.
But then Hyde threatens to kill Ernst. If Ernst comes, he will kill him, basically is what he's telling him.
Yeah, so we're hearing both the voices out of the same guy now. We're hearing Jekyll and we're hearing Hyde. Jekyll
Correct.
says, I'm going to, make this work. Hyde says, when Ernst shows up, I'm going to kill him. By the time the so-called messenger from the street gets to the lab, Hyde is back.
Yeah. Man comes, he's like, "Hey, can you move this basket to some other place or whatever?" And as the man has his back turned, Hyde shoots him in the back.
Just shoots him. I didn't know what his plan was, but then I
didn't
it.
either. Yeah, it took me a little longer to get his plan, but yeah. So then the police arrive, Karen, and we cut to Hyde pouring gasoline all over the lab. Police bust into the house. They try to enter the lab. Hyde busts out a window and yells,
"Help me,
help
me.
He's got a gun, help!" He says, "Let go of me, Dr. Jekyll. Don't hurt me, Dr. Jekyll." Then we cut to the police finding Maria's body upstairs. And back at the lab, Hyde lights the lab on fire and fires a gun. He's got a gun. Into the air. The police try to break down the door. And he's put the man that he shot in the chair behind the desk, slumped over the desk, right?
Yeah, like he's Jekyll. So when they burn it, they will find a body at the desk.
Yes.
Thinking it's Jekyll.
Hyde runs out and tells the police that Jekyll set fire to the lab and shot himself. I guess he shot himself in the back, Karen. Is that what he did?
I guess.
Maybe they didn't have, forensics like we do now.
Probably
Karen.
not.
I don't know.
I'm surprised you didn't tell me what kind of gun he used. Did you?
I didn't.
You couldn't see it? It was hard to see what kind it was.
I had a guess. I'd say it's a 38. Then we cut to what is like some legal, it appears to be a legal proceeding, Karen.
Yeah, some sort of committee meeting. They're talking about Jekyll.
And they ruled that Jekyll's death was a suicide and that he was responsible for all the murders.
Yes, and how fortunate it is that Mr. Hyde has escaped.
Yes.
The case of Dr. Jekyll is a solid warning to us not to meddle with the divine pattern of nature. They say he was addicted to drugs, and in that deluded state, he exercised a revenge plan and then took his life. He was corrupted by dangerous experiments.
And Hyde is sitting there the whole time.
Yes.
And then as they're leaving, Jekyll begins to take control again.
Hyde is walking out with Ernst.
Yes.
And Ernst is saying that Jekyll is a good man. And I think that triggers Jekyll to try to get out because we hear his voice again.
Yes, he tells Dr. Littauer, Ernst, to help him.
So there's this weirdness. Help me. I must leave. Help me. So he's holding on to Ernst, but trying to leave at the same time because Jekyll wants help and Hyde is trying to leave immediately because he's can't control the struggle.
Then the doctor and the police watch as Hyde turns back to Jekyll, old and gray. Jekyll says he has destroyed Hyde. And Ernst says, and you have destroyed yourself. And he is arrested by the police.
For all the crimes.
For all the crimes. Credits. The end. All right, Karen. Anything you were pleasantly surprised by or really enjoyed in this film?
One thing I was pleasantly surprised by, and you're probably going to laugh, but this is the first movie that we've watched that I think Sir Christopher Lee was having fun.
Okay.
He looked like he was enjoying himself in this role. And in most of the roles I've seen him,
it was a pretty good role.
It's a different character. I get that. You can't be jolly.
It'd be a fun character to play, I think.
Yeah. And I get his other roles were not, but he always looked miserable in like the Dracula films. He just looks like he's miserable. And this one, he really looks like he's having a good time. And I really like that about this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a Hammer film. So sets are great. Costumes are great.
Mm-hmm.
Acting's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Overall.
Yeah, I think it's good. Christopher Lee's good. I think, what's her name? Girl played Kitty. Dawn Adams. It's good.
It's hard to say. I kind of like Dr. Jekyll. I definitely didn't like the acting of Mr. Hyde, but we can talk about that in a minute. Is there anything else that you really liked? There was a little bit of shadow work where he was pacing, but it was minimal.
Yeah, I didn't even notice any of that. I didn't think there was any of that kind of stuff. It was.
I mean, the snake was excellent.
Excellent actor.
Yes.
Or actress.
I wonder if it has a name. I didn't check the credits.
Don't think it was credited. Yeah, I agree. I say it's a different Hammer film than anyone we've done. All the other Hammer films have been very gothic, right? For the most part.
Yes.
This is different. It seems more modern, even though it's supposed to be 1874. That's a pretty nice club, I think, for 1874. Karen.
I agree. And the makeup and the costumes, like her dress and things. I don't know because I don't study 1870.
Yeah, when she was going to bed with full makeup on too. Weird.
Greg, we all do. We got to wake up looking.
She didn't have the cucumbers and green shit all over her face, Karen. Maybe that came later. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe that's a 20th century.
But I like this. And I think the story is interesting. I always like the story of everybody has good and evil and they struggle. You can put an interesting spin on it.
Some of us struggle more than others.
Or some of you
or less.
Or you don't. Some of you don't. But you could,
I suppose. Yeah, it felt like a very modern take on the Jekyll and Hyde thing. But again, like I said, it really wasn't set in modern times.
No.
It felt like it, though.
It did.
It felt more 1960s than 1870s.
Yeah, almost like a play. Didn't you think? Each set was kind of distinct. It could have been a play. It was good.
Okay, what didn't you like?
I didn't like Hyde. Well, actually, to be honest, there weren't many likable characters in it. Everyone was definitely flawed, except good old Ernst.
Yeah.
He was the only one who was...
In hindsight, I agree.
Kind of the moral compass, trying to keep everyone... Like he was looking out... No, but he was looking out for Kitty. He was telling Jekyll, you're ignoring your wife. You need to pay attention to her.
He was the warning at the beginning and the I told you so at the end.
Yes. But none of the characters they're just all deeply flawed, which that's fine. Human beings
are the human condition.
Yes, I agree. But you didn't really root for anyone. Everyone was kind of horrible in it.
You didn't root for Jekyll to overcome Hyde?
Yes, I guess, but he was so obsessed with his own experiments that he didn't really pay attention to anyone else. It's very selfish.
I feel like he kind of realized the error of his ways once it was too late, unfortunately.
Right. But... Well, and there were moments when he tried to get Kitty to stay, and he did say there were moments, but overall his character is deeply flawed. So it's kind of hard to root for anyone. I know who we're supposed to root for, and I kind of did, but I certainly Ernst. Kitty to get out of there alive, leave them all behind. So there was that. I thought Hyde, his acting seemed over the top, but it would be hard if you think about it, an actor playing two roles like that and having to make them so different. On the surface, you think, oh, that'd be easy. I'll just talk in this other voice. But you have to remember how to be each one, how to walk, how to talk, how to, he didn't seem to have anything different. He didn't have a limp or he didn't have there was nothing physically different between them, but except for the beard and the eyes, the contacts or whatever. But I was almost supposed to be devilish and charming, but he didn't come off that way to me.
Yeah. I was distracted by him looking away from everyone. Christopher Lee is sitting next to him, talking to him, and he's looking straight ahead, not looking at Christopher Lee.
I think it's supposed to be that he was so detached because he didn't really care about anyone but himself. Maybe that's what they were trying to show.
I almost wondered if he was like reading a cue card or some shit.
Oh, maybe.
I don't think so, but
that's what I didn't like about it. What about you? Anything?
Yeah, just what I said.
And I did think it was slow in the beginning. And then picked up. All the action happens in the second half. But, you're establishing who's who and all of that stuff. But
yeah, well, in the last half hour, not even the second half.
Well, there's the snake charmer and the dance. It kind of has its moments, but it just kind of seemed like, well, what's going to happen?
Well, all that shit I thought was too long. Even it's like there were time fillers where the snake dancer and the can girls were filling time. We got to stretch this out.
Right. And even when he was gambling, I mean, we didn't need to see a bunch of time. We get it.
I would have liked to seen less of the dancing and more of the gambling.
Well, or more of what they did in London that was so
because all we saw was him writing notes. We didn't see him
True. But I guess he only played
obviously
cards.
Losing badly.
Yeah. And no one seemed to get upset because he lost and they're like, well, you lost a lot. And he said, have I ever not honored my bet? He's always paid
his debt. So they don't care. He's giving them notes, IOUs.
Yes.
I mean, if he didn't, they'd just find someone to break his legs, right?
But he nothing happened to him.
No, because he always paid his debts because Jekyll
Jekyll.
always gave me money.
And they also didn't say how they knew each other. Did they grow up together? Were they in school? Like, what makes it so that Jekyll would keep giving him money? Because it was a lot of money. Yeah. It wasn't trivial amounts. So
I assume that Jekyll had no clue about
it didn't seem
Paul
like
and
it.
Kitty until we saw them dancing together.
Yeah.
Because he was actually so engaged in his work. He wasn't paying attention.
And he was insulting to Kit, like, you never want to know about my work. You don't understand my work. And well, she's not a scientist. How's she going to? And even if you are a scientist, you don't always understand what someone else is doing if they're not going to sit down and explain it to you. And she was a social butterfly and he was antisocial. So I don't even know why they were married, because they've had such different life tracks. But he seemed to be wealthy and she seemed to like that. But he did ignore her and he didn't include her in anything. And so,
And vice versa, Karen.
Yes. Well, yeah. But she knows he's not going to go out to the party, and he knows
she's planning on it.
Well, and he knows she's not going to come in and sit down and say, oh, tell me all about your work. They just seemed incompatible from the start.
By the way, Karen, this film was released on May 3rd, the day this episode comes out.
Well, thank God you said so, because I'm sure our listener was like, why? Why did Greg pick this movie? And now we know.
Happy 63rd anniversary. Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. All right, Karen, what kind of cocktail rating you want to give this film?
I think this is better than a lot of the Hammer films we've watched, maybe just because it's different. But
this is better than Captain Kronos?
I liked it better.
You like Christopher Lee better in this than you do in the Dracula films we watched? So far.
I think it's a 3.
Okay.
I think it's better than Captain Kronos for sure.
Come on, Karen.
But I don't.
It doesn't have Caroline Munro in it.
That's true.
What do we give Captain Kronos?
I think I gave it a 4. But you liked it better than me.
That would not surprise me, Karen. You did give it a 4. All right. 3. You said 3?
Yeah. Do you disagree? Do you think it's a 4?
I say it's a 3.5, but we can give it a 3.
It's not a. That's the problem.
We gave the last film a 2 after I thought it was a 2.5, so we can give this one a 3.
It's all a compromise. I think the acting was a little better than some we've seen, and I think I was taken in by Christopher Lee looking like he had fun, which I've never seen before. So even in The Wicker Man, he was excellent in it, but I don't think
he was having fun in that.
It was different. He didn't look miserable in that. But that wasn't was that a Hammer film?
Yeah, I think
so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I take it back. He looked better in that one. So it's not the first time I've seen him, but he just looked so relaxed and
I think that one
he enjoyed
he was
the character.
So over the top that
it
was fun.
And maybe, not being the star or something, he just really looked like he enjoyed this role.
Wicker Man was not a Hammer film.
It looked like one.
British Lion Films.
Oh, I vaguely remember that now.
Did you know that Dawn Addams was a princess at one point?
Did she marry a prince?
She did. And quickly divorced him. Or they quickly separated, but the divorce didn't become formal for 20 years. She was a princess for some 20 odd years of a province in Italy. Princess Dawn. All right, 3 cocktails. Karen, would you like to hear a critic review from the time?
Critics Corner. Go for it.
This is from the New York Times, August 24th of 1961. And I paraphrase a little, not much. I pretty much have the whole thing here except for the first couple sentences. This lurid American international release, made by the British production team responsible for recent versions of Frankenstein, Dracula, and Jack the Ripper, adorns the familiar tale with some drastic contemporaneous revisions. All the emphasis in this cinescope and color orgy is upon the depravities of the villainous Mr. Hyde. In a few evenings of self-indulgent revelry, he experiments with liquor, opium, gambling, a can-can chorus, and a dancer's pet python, which he employs to dispose of a degenerate rival. Then, with an affected yawn, he complains that the pleasures of London are pretty lame. Paul Massey plays the good Dr. Jekyll with a frog in his throat and a beard. His Hyde is baby-faced and equipped with a high falsetto. The mystery of the vanishing beard is left unexplained, perhaps fortunately. In a role formerly played by John Barrymore, Spencer Tracy, and Frederick March, Mr. Massey is frankly ridiculous. John Adams plays his adulterous wife, a new character combining elements from the ill-fated dance hall girl and Dr. Jekyll's ladylike fiancé with inexplicable enthusiasm. As her worthless but irresistible lover, Christopher Lee is somewhat less convincing than he was as Dracula.
So did they like it?
They did not.
Oh. That lurid? I wouldn't call it lurid.
Lurid, that's what he calls it. Yeah, I didn't like the shot there at Christopher Lee at the end either, but whatever.
Well, and I think partly too, it was hard for the actor who played Dr. Jekyll. A lot of his lines were, "Who am I? Who am I?" Like, what are you going to do with that? You know?
And he didn't really talk with a falsetto as Hyde either.
No, but it wasn't that low, slow voice.
No, it wasn't. Well, that's the review from 1961.
Did it make money?
As is usual, it was part of a double feature, I believe.
Oh.
The film lost Hammer an estimated £30,000.
I think you're right, though. It's so different than their other films. It does feel modern instead of gothic, like you said. And I think that I'm sure some people were just, there's nothing scary about it. The monster is just decadent.
Younger looking man,
supposedly more handsome and, devilish. It's more psychological in some way,
I feel like they've done this with this story since this film, I think, but I think this was the first film that kind of turned it upside down like that, and almost like Hyde is more handsome than Jekyll. You know what I mean?
Yes. I think that's opposite of the book, isn't it?
Yeah. And all the other films, the older films I've seen, Hyde is more bushy eyebrows than Jekyll is, right?
Well, there's no that's what I mean. There's no
kind of
monster to look at. There's nothing scary. You just don't like him.
Yeah. Well, he's no conscience, basically.
Yeah, he's morally scary, but he's not physically scary.
He's more do what thou wilt.
Yes. Live deliciously.
Yes.
He's not physically scary.
No. Still kill your ass, though.
True. In a heartbeat.
All right. Comments on the cocktail, Karen? What'd you think of the...
This definitely goes on
poison.
The Lanai menu.
Okay. Like I said,
but it might be as the Shark Lady, but still.
Very similar to the Shark Lady, I think. Except it doesn't have the gummy sharks.
I like the gummy sharks, though.
I do, too. There might be a couple other ingredients in the Shark Lady, but...
I think there were, but I don't remember what.
Karen, all you got to do is go to the recipe den.
It's true. If you are interested in finding any of our recipes from any of our episodes, they are all in the recipe den. And you can go to the YouTube channel and watch Greg make them all.
Anything we learned today, Karen?
We learned about pythons and blinking. Tiny bit about the story and where it came from.
Yeah, the strange case of Dr. Jekyll. You said it was based on a
Nightmare.
Gothic novella by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson. What else did he wrote some other shit, right? What else did he write? Treasure Island.
That would be a big one.
Anything else we learned?
No, this was a tough one. I couldn't come up with stuff to learn.
All right, Karen. Next film, I believe, is your choice. Once again.
Do you want to know what I picked?
What film have you chosen for
Or
us,
do you just want to
Karen?
complain that it's my turn again? Well, I have a fan request, Greg.
Fan request?
Yes.
The hell you say? Go on.
Kristen in Colorado would like us to do The Conjuring from 2013. I've never seen this movie. Have you seen it?
I have not. I kind of know what it's about, but I haven't seen it. That's the only reason you chose it, because Kristen wanted it.
Well, yeah. Isn't that good enough? What Kristen wants, Kristen gets.
All right.
And if anyone else has a movie they'd like us to do, just email Karen at scaryspirits.com, Greg at scaryspirits.com, or info at scaryspirits.com.
Do you have a cocktail for The Conjuring, Karen?
I do.
Oh, go on.
It's called The Conjuring,
Wow.
and you're going to hate it. 1 ounce of absinthe, 1 ounce white cream to cacao, 1 ounce of coconut milk, and a drizzle of black sambuca.
Am I going to hate it because I have to go buy a bunch of shit now?
Well,
Other than the absinthe?
Yeah, I didn't think you liked absinthe.
It's an acquired thing, I think.
It says, this drink looks so cool, very spooky looking. I guess the black sambuca floats on the bottom and diffuses through the cocktail. So you drizzle it in, which I can never do. So we'll see.
Is there anyone you would like to thank this week? I feel like this week I haven't said Karen enough. Karen.
The drinking game participants are very disappointed in you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, Greg, as always, I'd like to thank our listener. There's a lot of podcasts out there. Thank you for spending time with us. Who do you need to thank, Greg?
Oh, Karen. I need to thank James Chavez for subscribing to our YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you, James.
And also, I need to thank the band Verse 13 for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music definitely makes the podcast better.
Anything else, Karen?
Please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Hey, it's Karen, and I'm here to talk to you about getting social with us. Did you know you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast? Or check out our website, scaryspirits.com. If you have something to say, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Please drink responsibly.